Hello, and welcome to the M.A.G Network. We are happy to have Dr. Jennifer Dillman, with Dillman Wellness, in Indiana with us. She will be talking about what medicines to stockpile for a worst-case scenario. Dr. Jen will also be one of our guest speakers, and one of the co-hosts, for the Patriot Homesteaders Conference, April 28th to 30th in Scott County, Indiana. Pre-registration is open, and if you register now, you can save money with the early bird discount. We will have a link to Dr. Jen's Facebook page as well as Dillman Wellness website and all of the products and events discussed in this video at the end and in the comments. This class is brought to you by the M.A.G Network and is part of our monthly education series. To find out about upcoming online and in-person events, join our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/groups/M.A.G Network. If you have comments or suggestions for possible upcoming classes, email them at mag.network@outlook.com.
Hello, and welcome to the M.A.G Network. I'm Indie Guy. Today we have Dr. Jennifer Dillman with Dillman Wellness that'll be talking with us about meds you should stockpile for the worst case scenario. So let's get to it. Dr. Jen, welcome and thank you.
Glad you guys are here tonight. I appreciate it. Appreciate having this opportunity to share with people. So let me get started on my slides here. Except, where are my notes? There, maybe that's it. Yeah, okay. All right. So, can everybody see my my slide? Meds you should stockpile for worst case scenarios. Yes. Thank you so much. Okay, wonderful. All right. So let's get started. Just a disclaimer, the information and opinions voiced in this presentation are my own or were researched in publicly available websites and books. I'm a traditional doctor of naturopathy and not a licensed medical doctor. This information isn't meant to take the place of seeking medical help from your healthcare provider. The practice of medicine without a license is illegal and punishable by law. Seek modern and standard medical care whenever and wherever it's available. And this presentation isn't intended to provide you with an exhaustive list of everything. It's designed to get you thinking. All right. So tonight we're going to cover likely medical issues you'll face, over-the-counter and prescription considerations. In the meantime, top 5 meds and items to stash plus some runner-ups, 10 categories of medicines you'll want to stockpile, an antibiotic education, natural alternatives, storing meds, keep it quiet, pets and livestock, seniors, stocking a first aid kit, cultivating a long haul mindset, how to need fewer stockpiled meds, and then tough advice seen in the comments section. This ebook is going to be your gift for attending tonight, and it has pretty much everything that we're going over tonight in it. So what if access to medical care or access to pharmaceuticals becomes scarce or non-existent? Maybe you're in pretty good health now and you've always had relatively easy access to medical care, prescription and over-the-counter drugs. Maybe you have pretty serious health challenges. An awful lot for granted, don't we? So don't bank on getting advance notice or a warning that you need to gather the things that we'll talk about today. Be proactive and start now. In a disaster, people will make a run on stores for many things, including medicines and medical supplies. And both over-the-counter and prescription drugs could be worth their weight in gold in the future. So you should consider maybe taking a solid first aid course or even a paramedic EMT course. I'm looking at one 10 miles up the road from me. None of these meds will do you or your family members that you could have taken care of in the moment if only you knew how. So what exactly do I need to know? Well, as much as you're willing to learn. I'm going to share an excellent list of printed resources you can begin to learn from and have in a very important worst case scenario library. And don't depend on electronic resources. You want tangible books that you've actually read. And when I get my books, I tab always the table of contents and the index for the very first thing. So if there's ever an emergency and I need to know how to splint something, I can flip right to it, or I can show it to somebody. So tabbing things, highlighting things, actually reading those. So I've got a plan of the books that I'm going to read through in 2023 to get me more up to speed on being able to address emergency first aid issues. And I think you should too. Teresa Krause, an internet author that I read, said that knowledge is the only doctor that can save you when there's no medical help around you. Prepare not just for survival, but so you can remain free. You might need to know what to do if you or a loved one are shot or have tear gas in your eyes, if you break a bone, and you never know when you might need this knowledge, even if there's not a worst case scenario someday. And while getting that first aid training is very important and could make you a valuable asset in any group, did you know that the CDC says that 1 out of every 2 adults has a chronic illness? So caring for a bullet wound is an important skill to have, but that's not the majority of what we'll need to address in a worst case scenario. And I'll say that none of this that we talk about tonight is meant to scare or worry anyone. My husband, Denny Dillman, is the homesteading pastor, and you can find him at www.homesteadingpastor.org. And he loves to quote Isaiah 41:10. He always says, I ain't a scared. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. But Proverbs 22:3 says, the prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. So it's definitely always better to be prepared to help yourself and others and never need to use these things than to need them and be unprepared. So here are some likely medical issues that you'll face. I need to make this bigger. So this is based on the experience of medical missionaries over an extended time in a remote area, and that helps to identify many medical issues that could occur in disaster settings. So these things that we'll talk about weren't unusual for them to see. And would you know how to address these things? An infection, whether it's respiratory, diarrheal, wounds, minor infections, STDs, biting insects, and the diseases they carry. Trauma, minor injuries like sprains, strains, cuts, and scrapes, major injuries like fractures and knife, gunshot wounds, and burns. Dental, toothaches, broken or knocked out teeth, loose crowns, dental work, lost fillings. Allergic reactions, minor ones like insect bites and stings, and major ones like anaphylactic shock. And then women's issues, pregnancy, miscarriage, and birth control. The book, and I should have brought it up here with but it's called the Survival Medicine Handbook that contains an exhaustive list, an extensive list of the skills that you'll want to have a level of confidence in if you're hoping to be the community medic resource in a worst case scenario. And it's such an excellent resource. Should have. They say in the book, once you've learned the basics, you'll be able to take care of 90% of the problems that confront you in times of trouble. So as you learn tonight, you're going to maybe want to start a running list of medications that you might want to stock up on. So remember, everyone's list is going to look different. And what your family needs might be different from what my family needs. But regardless, think over these considerations for over-the-counter meds. Make a list of the over-the-counter drugs that you and your family use most often. When you have your supply, check and rotate your stock. In ideal circumstances, you might have stockpiled enough to get you and your loved ones through 6 months or more. Maximize efficacy, shelf life, and broad spectrum application. Go with life-saving over nice to have if there's a crunch and you've got to make a choice. Many symptoms are temporary and you might not need to store a med for that. Tough times call for tough people. The way to need and everyone's supply. Now, when it comes to prescriptions, if you have conditions like cancer, heart disease, or diabetes, you might have a difficult time stockpiling those meds. And now this is not my advice. It's just something I read on the internet, just like you could. But it suggested that if possible, that you could reserve a couple of days worth of medications every time you go for a refill. If you save up a month's worth over time, that might be enough to get you through a worst case scenario. Pills last longer than liquid meds. So if you have a choice for what you stockpile pills. In a worst case scenario, and you usually store a med in the fridge, I had never thought about this until I read it. You can store it in your toilet tank in a Ziploc bag, not the bowl, obviously, stored in the toilet tank in a Ziploc bag. At the very least, this water is cooler than room temperature in an emergency situation. Ideally, if you can, work with your doctor to develop a 90 to 120-day supply of those needed medications, especially if you or your family member has a life-threatening condition. However, if a 2-week supply of the most critical drugs is the best you can do, it's better than nothing. And it never hurts to ask, especially if you share the reason you're wanting to do this. And I've got another slide about nicely asking for extra prescription meds in the future. In the meantime, so while we are in this period where we pray this stuff doesn't happen, but if it does, that we would be prepared. But in the meantime, look for ways you can minimize your dependence on these meds if possible. Solving the underlying problem is much different than masking symptoms. Many of our diseases, symptoms, and complaints start with bad lifestyle choices. So it's time to get real about that. Or you can be in the process of learning about alternatives to those drugs, herbal and otherwise. Of course, I need to say you should only change or discontinue medications with a doctor's supervision. This is interesting. Consider getting a full workup and or a second opinion from a different doctor. Doctors do their best. Or at least we all hope they do. But did you know that the Mayo Clinic did a very surprising study, and their findings were, and this is quoted from the article, many patients come to Mayo Clinic for a second opinion or diagnosis confirmation before treatment for a complex condition. In a new study, Mayo Clinic reports that as many as 88% of those patients go home with a new or refined diagnosis, changing their care plan and potentially their lives. Conversely, only 12% receive confirmation that the original diagnosis was complete and correct. So are you, before we lay in all these meds, are you diagnosed and medicated correctly? It's an important question to ask. Like I said, doctors do their best, but MD does not mean medical deity, and so sometimes they may not know everything, and that may be their very best educated guess. But a second opinion might give you a different answer. If I took my car to 3 different mechanics, I might get 3 different answers. So, and varying in expense and complexity. All right. So now let's talk about the top 5 meds or items to stash, plus some runner-ups. Number 1, obviously, your own prescriptions or a family member's. And you can ask your doctor, hey, doc, I'm just making sure that I'm prepared for emergencies and want to make sure that I have any extra medication that you might think I'd need if something happened and I couldn't get a refill for a while. Recognize that insurance might not want to play along with your plans, so you might have to pay for anything extra out of your own pocket. If you hear about a disaster, get to the pharmacy as soon as you can, if you can, to get a refill if you're due soon, and immediately begin to ration your meds. If your doctor thinks it's okay, I'm not trying to play doctor. And so Teresa Krause in one of her articles said, if you can skip a dose of your medications or take your meds twice a day instead of 3 or 4 times a day without suffering life-threatening conditions, then do so. Number 2 to stash, no pun intended there, but antidiarrheals. Normally, it's very manageable and common, but in a worst case scenario, it could be quite a bit more dangerous. It might not be so easy to replace lost fluids in these circumstances. So, these antidiarrheals don't typically address the root cause of the diarrhea, but something like Imodium can slow down intestinal movement and ease that a bit. Pepto, kaopectate, Maalox can ease intestinal inflammation and can also help with nausea. You would probably need to stock up on electrolytes and water to replenish lost fluids. And I've got a Pedialyte like recipe in the next slide. And if the diarrhea goes beyond a few days, you may want to consider dipping into your supply of antibiotics, which we'll talk about having a supply of antibiotics in a bit. So number 2.5 are anti-nausea and anti-emetic drugs. So either end of the spectrum there. And so over-the-counter drugs for nausea would be Pepto-Bismol, Dramamine, or Imitrol. Prescription drugs would be Zofran ODT, and that means oral dissolvable tablet, which is an important thing to think about. If you're throwing stuff up, you may not get a tablet all the way down and dissolved. And so something that is going to go to work in your mouth and get into your bloodstream could be really helpful in that case. And Phenergan is a prescription drug for nausea. Consider a brat diet, bananas, rice, applesauce, or toast. Florida or somebody that can grow some bananas. I don't know if freeze-dried bananas would do the same because it would seem like that would draw moisture out of the body. That is not what you would want with either of these if you are trying to make sure and stay hydrated. And then a Pedialyte solution is a liter of water, 6 teaspoons of sugar, and a teaspoon of salt. Number 3, pain relievers and anti-inflammatories. There are 2 main categories of over-the-counter pain meds, and those are NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, aspirin, and Aleve, and acetaminophen, which is Tylenol. It's helpful for muscle aches, sore throats, backaches, headaches, colds, toothaches as a fever reducer. NSAIDs go a step further than the acetaminophen, and they reduce swelling. Children's Tylenol is okay for any age, and it's okay for pregnancy. Children's Motrin only for children over 6 months, and the advice is not to use aspirin if someone is under the age of 18. Number 4, an antibiotic ointment, something like Neosporin, that can prevent infections. It's good in addition to isopropyl alcohol. You want to irrigate the wound with alcohol to disinfect at first and then apply the antibiotic ointment and wrap with some kind of bandage. The ointment is a good long-term solution because alcohol evaporates quickly, and the ointment is a good physical obstacle for bacteria. Number 5, isopropyl alcohol, that disinfects scrapes and cuts. And it only takes a little break in your skin barrier for bacteria to wreak all kinds of havoc. So you really want to be careful with that, in a worst case scenario type situation where maybe we're not able to be as clean as we would be normally. Get the alcohol on there ASAP after the cut, because liquid is good at getting into all the facets of the wound. Hydrogen peroxide is good, but not as good as alcohol. And it's not only for disinfecting skin, but other surfaces. So if you needed to clean off a table or something like that, and it can also kill bacteria on your hands if you can't wash. I've got 3 runners up. We've got antihistamine, like something like Benadryl. It's multi-purpose. It helps with insect bites, stings, swelling, and allergic reactions. Any stimulates an immune response, Benadryl can help with. It can also help with vertigo and if someone needs to be sedated. Another runner-up is prednisone, and that's for people with emphysema and asthma. And lastly, an EpiPen for severe anaphylactic allergies. All right, then this next section is about 10 categories of medicines that you'll want to stockpile. And so the first 5 were just very generally, you want to have we're going to look at least you're anticipating needing and make adjustments with these next 10 categories. With children's medications, you want to store liquid medications for children, possibly. Consider things like fevers, teething pain, run-of-the-mill sickness. Children's strength ibuprofen, Advil Motrin, not for use until 6 months old, and that may contradict what I said on a previous slide. So sorry about that. I didn't check that one. And then acetaminophen, Tylenol, not for use until 3 months old. Nasal saline is great for congestion that can thin out those secretions and help them get out. A suction bulb or a nose Frida is going to help to evacuate the sinuses. And then honey for cough, not cough syrup, but of course you can't use honey until the children are a year old. Birth control, not trying to step on anyone's religious or philosophical toes here. Consider that you may need to know how to deliver a child if someone gets pregnant in a crisis situation. The Survival Medicine Handbook says, be fruitful, don't multiply, at least in the early going of a major collapse. But Jeremiah 29:6 said, when the Israelites were in exile, God told them to take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters, multiply there and do not decrease. All that being said, birth control pills could run out. Condoms get brittle after a couple of years. So natural family planning and being mindful of ovulation could be very beneficial to know and be able to teach in a worst case scenario. Skin medications, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of these in the first aid section, but just think about things that could happen like sunburn. So you might need sunscreen or something to alleviate sunburn, rashes, skin problems, and wounds. And like I said, we'll talk more about that coming up. Breathing medications. Does anyone you know need an inhaler? For wheezing and shortness of breath, look for an inhaler with a beta agonist like albuterol. But Primatene Mist is available over the counter. It is, however, less effective, but sometimes easier to get in a pinch and easier to stock up on. Allergy medications. You might want to consider sometimes the benefits and uses of daytime versus nighttime versions of some of these allergy medications in the future. Of course, consider stocking up on anything that's prescribed. Otherwise, the top 5 over-the-counter allergy medications are Benadryl, Claritin, Allegra, and Xyzal. Antibiotics, I have a whole section on antibiotics, but you'll want to store the ones that will cover you for the majority of the infections you might run into. There's no single perfect antibiotic for every illness, and you do need to consider that some people have intolerances and allergies to antibiotics. Gastrointestinal medications, think about things like stomach distress, constipation, diarrhea, heartburn. Heartburn and excess stomach acid could be useful for things with or using Zantac, Tums, and Prilosec. But I do have some natural remedies for heartburn and excess stomach acid in the natural alternatives section. Nausea, Emitrol, Meclizine, prochlorperazine, and ondansetron are different over-the-counter and RX versions of those. But with something like nausea, diarrhea, think about letting nature take its course. Maybe your body really needs to get rid of that, and you shouldn't stop it. However, it is a good idea to stop it if you're at risk of dehydration. For constipation, you can use things like Miralax, X-Lax, Correctol is the strongest, Smooth Move tea, aloe vera juice, and magnesium. And for diarrhea, kaopectate and Imodium. Pain medications, you want to consider both prescription and over-the-counter ones. There are 3 kinds of pain meds. There's narcotic, hydrocodone and oxycodone. That's going to be hard to stock up on. Anti-inflammatory drugs like naproxen or ibuprofen, and pain and fever relievers like acetaminophen. Number 9 is cold and flu medication. So consider people will have sore throats, coughs, congestion, body aches, fever, body aches, and sore throat. Acetaminophen, naproxen, or ibuprofen are good for those. For cough, dextromethorphan plus guaifenesin is Robitussin DM. Sinus and nasal congestion, pseudoephedrine like Benadryl. People get colds and flus because their immune system is weak. So things, you can just imagine in a worst case scenario, lack of sleep, stress, nutrient deficiencies like zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C, et cetera, can impact somebody's immune system. And so this one website recommended gargle with water ASAP with the first symptoms, or just preventively every morning during cold and flu season. Psychotropic medications. So this can include medications for depression, anxiety, and sleep. And you'll need to consider that these may eventually run out and they're likely going to be hard to stock up on. I recently attended a great training with Dr. James Greenblatt of Psychiatry Redefined on antidepressant withdrawal and deprescribing. ADHD and Alzheimer's are considerations as well for things that are treated with psychotropic medications. So if these are part of your symptom or disease pictures that you could solve or make better now, how wonderful that would be moving forward to need less of this medication, even if there's not a worst case scenario. And so some great books to consider if any of these areas are concerns for you are Finally Focused, and that helps with ADHD, Functional Medicine for Antidepressant Withdrawal, The Cinderella Story of Nutritional Lithium, Integrative Medicine for Depression, and Integrative Medicine for Alzheimer's. And all of those are by James Greenblatt with Psychiatry Redefined. All right. Maybe I should just take where am I? I'm about halfway through my slides. If you guys want to stop for a second and if anybody has any questions, see if everything's making sense and sounding good so far.
I have a question, Dr. Jen. This is Jenny Bullington. And I was wondering, how do you determine the potency, or when things are like, how long past expiration can you go that it'll lose its potency if you try to stock up on some things?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So that's a great question, but I do cover that. Okay. Anything else before, or I can wait for Jenny to come back. I'm sorry, you were Jenny. I meant Janice. Oh, there she is. Okay. So let's keep going because I do cover that, Jenny. So let's talk about antibiotics now. So disclaimer by doing a Google search. So the number one killer in a crisis after panic is usually disease. Just as an interesting piece of information, people are generally believed to be no longer contagious after they've been on an antibiotic for 24 hours or they no longer have a fever. Antibiotics are a very important part of your stockpile, which is why it gets its own section. Learn generic names for the antibiotics or any prescription ones. You can access either never take. Jenny, here's that slide. 88% of pill meds can last 1 to 5 years beyond their expiration, but you should do your research on the meds that you want to store. So how to determine if an illness is bacterial or viral, because sometimes that can depend on the antibiotic that you're going to apply. So with viral, there may or may not be a fever, but with bacterial, a bacterial infection generally does cause a fever. So that's anything over 100 degrees. Viral, the location, it usually causes extensive symptoms. So you're going to feel that all over. Whereas with the bacterial infection, that's going to be site specific, like chest, sinuses, or throat, limited somewhat to that. The duration of a viral illness is usually 2 to 10 days, but bacterial illnesses can last more than 10 days. And then the phlegm color for a viral illness produces cloudy or clear mucus or none at all, whereas a bacterial infection is going to have a phlegm with color, bloody, yellow, green, or brownish. Now, I understand you can buy antibiotics over the counter in Mexico. It also sounds like you might be able to buy antibiotics online from countries where they don't require a prescription. So if you do decide to go this route to stock up, place a small order first to make sure that they can reliably deliver the correct product. Jace Medical, who I'm going to be talking about in a minute, says that the best way to take antibiotics is to never need them. So that's great if we can do things that are going to cause us to avoid ever needing them. But if we do, I've read that fish or bird antibiotics are the same grade antibiotics for human use. And there are several fish, bird, human equivalents available from online or possibly local pet stores. So these veterinary antibiotics, there's for amoxicillin, fish, and that should be Mox, sorry, fish Mox Forte. Autocorrect comes and gets you on stuff like this. Erythromycin, fish Mycin Forte. Ciprofloxacin is fish Flow Forte. Cephalexin is fish Flex. And I don't know how to pronounce these. Metronidazole is fish Zol Forte. Clindamycin is fish Sin, and doxycycline is bird biotic. But of course, double check, triple check dosages to make sure that you're correct before taking, because I'm sure for fish, you need a very small amount. For humans, you need considerably more. Same with translating from birds to humans on that. Antibiotics without a prescription. So a company called Jace Medical, and we have a $10 discount code for you guys tonight. Oh, some of those animal antibiotics, Jenny, just, stuff in your fish tank, or, diseases that birds come down with, viral or bacterial, I guess, bacterial diseases that your birds or fish might come down with. And so, you're not going to do labs, or, something on your fish, or possibly on your bird. And so I guess that's why these things are available over the counter. And then I know there's a lot of things, that you can go pick up at Tractor Supply, that are for cows and horses, and things like that, that people are allowed to purchase and use on their own animals. But of course, lots of research to make sure that, what you're using it for is correct. But I read all kinds of wonderful comments from people. They got this stuff from these fish and bird suppliers, and the numbers were even the same as what would be seen on human FDA antibiotics. But certainly, okay. Certainly, check that out for yourself. Your mileage may vary, and I'd rather you be safe. Janice said, I've had 2 RNs recommend ordering from Grant Pharmacy. Is that, Janice, is that a human pharmacy?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And we've stocked up on amoxicillin from Walmart Pet, just FYI for all. Very good. Okay, so back to Jace Medical. And so I have an affiliate code for Jace, and they have offered us a $10 discount today. So Indy can maybe share that with you in the chat. If not, I can. But they have an emergency supply of human antibiotics that you can order. It's called the Jace case, so that's cute. And you can get a handy antibiotic guide PDF from them on their website without purchasing anything at all. If you'd like to learn more about antibiotics and their uses, it's a really nice guide. In this kit, you get, excuse me, amoxicillin, azithromycin, ciprofloxacin, doxycycline, metronidazole, a booklet, a carrying case, and the ability to follow. It's not too bad. Imagine how costly not having them could be. But regardless of where your stockpiled antibiotics come from, make sure to store them away from heat in dark, dry areas and avoid freezing. Let's see here, everyone. And all right, they gave me a nice short code. All right, so that's the place where you can go and look at the Jace Medical Jace case. And then my discount code is Dr. Jen ND 10, and that will get you $10 off that case. All right, let's talk about some natural alternatives. And this is not in the ebook. So if you wanted to take notes on this, you would want to do that. So keep in mind that herbs taken for medicinal purposes isn't that much different from taking prescriptions or over-the-counter drugs. Herbs can have interactions and side effects too. So don't think that just because it's natural, that it couldn't cause a problem. So use care, get educated. So some natural alternatives for cardiovascular and blood pressure situations. So consider vegetables, spices, and herbs like beets. Beets are so healthy for strengthening the cardiovascular system and the heart. Cinnamon can lower LDL and blood sugar levels. Hawthorn is known for toning the heart and cardiovascular system. The berries and leaves are both good when used fresh or dried for lowering blood pressure, relieving angina pain, and helping with restful sleep. And garlic, I could do a whole webinar on garlic, but it's great for cardiovascular and blood pressure situations. Water is the best blood thinner on the market. You may want to look at, excuse me, increasing potassium levels. So consuming foods like potatoes, tomato juice, bananas, and coconut water, and keeping your magnesium and calcium in proper balance. And then ubiquinol or CoQ10 is an important nutrient, especially if somebody's on statins. If somebody's on statins and they're not taking CoQ10 or ubiquinol, it's being just siphoned from your body, and you need to supplement with that. Or I've heard that you need to supplement with that. I'm not telling you to do that because I'm not a licensed medical doctor. Natural alternatives for inflammation, arthritis, and chronic pain. Consider vegetables, spices, and herbs like honey. Honey is an all-round healer with antibacterial, antifungal, antibiotic properties. 1 to 3 tablespoons a day can help also be applied to wounds as an antiseptic. And I know I've taken flour and honey and made it into a paste and used that as a drawing salve on splinters and things like that. Jalapeno or cayenne pepper is good for inflammation, and the curcumin and turmeric is anti-inflammatory and is helpful in arthritis. Also, black pepper, cayenne pepper, basil, cardamom, chamomile, chives, cilantro, cinnamon, cloves, garlic, ginger, nutmeg, parsley, rosemary, and turmeric. In a long-term crisis, you can only imagine that pain relievers will be unbelievably valuable. And while you may need to stockpile, or you may be able to stockpile some of your other necessary prescriptions, you're going to have a hard time stocking up on prescription painkillers for obvious reasons. So if pain is an important part of your symptom picture, you're going to want to look for alternatives to that. Natural alternatives for antibiotics. If you don't get a Jace case or some fish mocks or something, back to honey. It's a reminder that it's a natural antibiotic as well as an antiseptic that helps with wound healing. It's even been used to stop the spread of MRSA. Tea tree oil comes from Australia. So if you want some tea tree oil and you're concerned about some sort of shutdown, you better lay in a stock of it now. It's a powerful antifungal, antibacterial, and antiviral that helps with healing, but it does have a shelf life of 1 to 2 years depending on storage. So it's going to diminish in its healing properties over time. So be careful with that. The allicin in cut or crushed fresh raw garlic is a great antimicrobial, antifungal, antiseptic, antiviral, antibacterial, antithrombotic, anti-inflammatory agent. It's anti. Use care in applying it topically as it can burn or irritate skin. It might need dilution for what you're using it for. It can help improve circulation and reduce inflammation and swelling. There's so many great ways to use garlic. I know I put that in my food. I measure that with my heart, not with a teaspoon. Globs, like in almost everything I make. Okay, more natural alternatives for antibiotics like golden seal, Oregon grape, Andrographis paniculata. Horseradish can treat UTIs, sinus inflammation, and respiratory infections. Turmeric, also effective as an antibacterial, and ginger is useful for addressing mouth and respiratory infections. So, and continuing talking about antibiotics, stop to consider that your body is an antibiotic factory if you let it do its job. So what do you think fevers are for? It's burning out the infection. If we let it burn up to a certain point where it's not dangerous, the human body is amazing at healing if it has the proper tools to do it. There are, of course, times when the body needs some extra assistance. So certainly use antibiotics when needed. Natural alternatives for stomach acid reducers. Almonds can reduce stomach acid. Eat a handful and wait about 10 to 15 minutes. Aloe vera juice, apple cider vinegar, lemon juice, and apple slice, baking soda, bananas, basil, chamomile, cinnamon, fennel, garlic, ginger, and peppermint are all good for reducing stomach acid. I have several slides about skin issues. So with most things, the best treatment is going to be prevention. So wear appropriate footwear, use protective gloves for certain tasks. But for blisters, the baking soda paste will kill bacteria, reduce inflammation, and dry out the blister. Apple cider vinegar applied to new blisters will help. And aloe vera gel, according to the University of Maryland Medical Center, it's such a great anti-inflammatory that it's better than hydrocortisone cream. Helps with swelling and redness and hydrates skin, and plus it's easy to grow. Also, a honey and turmeric paste is antibacterial and healing for blisters. Garlic is a disinfectant, so apply juice to the area. Chamomile flowers are an antiseptic, and marigold flowers will help open blisters heal. For itchiness, you can use apple cider vinegar and aloe vera gel for itchiness, peppermint leaves, bentonite clay, fruit peels, wash before applying to skin. Basil leaves have an anti-itch compound in them, and oatmeal is good for itchiness. Wounds, yarrow will stop bleeding. Civil War soldiers carried yarrow in their personal medical kits, and you just open up a capsule of yarrow if that's what you've got handy, and put that in the wound, and that will help it stop bleeding. If it's a new wound, less than 8 hours, you have. But if it's an old wound, more than 8 hours, those don't get stitched. They might be contaminated by then, and you don't want to seal those germs in there. Keep it clean and let it get air. Natural alternatives for diabetes. So Gymnema sylvestre, fenugreek, and Tonkat Ali can help the pancreas regenerate beta cells to make insulin again. And so this can be really important for both type 1 and type 2 diabetics. Magnesium is an essential mineral that can help with blood sugar metabolism. 80% of Americans are deficient in magnesium anyway. North American ginseng, cinnamon, chromium, berberine is researched to be as effective as metformin for type 2 diabetes, which may vary. Check with your doctor. I'm not telling you to do that. Do your own research. Let's see. Coconut oil is antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral. It's a skin and hair conditioner, and it can help with athlete's foot. I know I'm not going to be probably growing any coconuts in southern Indiana, so that would be something that I would want to have a stash of, going into a worst case scenario. But there are other folks around the world or in the United States who might have coconuts, and so learning how to make your own coconut oil, work with coconuts would be important in that case. Colloidal silver. Consider a colloidal silver generator. When I bought mine, I made sure to get one that's battery powered. And I also bought a solar battery charger for it, thinking of all possible scenarios. I also bought a stovetop water distiller. I kept thinking all the way back down the chain. Well, if I have this, then I'm going to need this, and then I'm going to need this. So, so my $150 colloidal silver generator ended up costing quite a bit more because I needed to buy the rechargeable batteries. I bought the solar battery charger. I bought the stovetop water distiller, just to make sure that I was going to be able to do that in a real grid down type situation. But I got mine from and well, that's not going to let me get that out of that. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that the actual generator runs less than $150. And I'm going to tell you that the guy that does this, I said he's a really decent guy. The way I structured my order wasn't very efficient. So he refunded part of my order, and he didn't have to do that. I never would have known. And so his integrity is something that I remember about him and that transaction. So, I'm always eager to share his information people because I know he's a good guy. Colloidal silver is a cheap total spectrum antibiotic that's easy to make. Research it for yourself before investing in it, but it's documented to kill over 650 known bacteria. It's antiviral, anti-inflammatory, and antifungal. Aloe vera, mentioned it several times for topical and internal applications, treatment for burns, cuts, bruises, and many skin conditions, has pain reducing capabilities, internally very effective for ulcers, heartburn, constipation, hemorrhoids, and as a blood thinner, and it can be grown anywhere. Now, transitioning to natural alternatives, depending on the length of the crisis, you may eventually run out of the items that you've stockpiled. And when you can no longer replace what you've used up, you're going to need a way to produce more of the things you need. So you'll want to be prepared to gain and use the knowledge of how to grow and utilize natural alternatives. You might have to consider a day that medicinal plants and herbs may be all that you have to rely on. And that said, you would do well to learn about making teas, tinctures, oils, and salves. So this is a picture of some of my medicinal herb stash. So research the herbs that you think that you might need for your family situation. I did a big presentation a couple of years ago about herbs, homeopathy, and homesteading. And my research led me to identifying a bunch of herbs that I wanted to have on hand for our family. So I ordered bags of all these beautiful herbs from Starwest Botanicals, and I have an affiliate link for them. Um, so looks like something popped up. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, probably in, Jenny says, what's the best way to store bulk herbs? Now, probably in my clear glass jars, not the best way to store bulk herbs like that, but I like them and they're pretty, but usually darker in uh, not an area that's going to get a lot of sun is probably the best way to store bulk herbs. But also I wanted them out where I could think about using them more frequently as well. So I'm just going to share my link for Starwest Botanicals. And if you're local, I'm in Southern Indiana and I get down to Louisville a couple of days that I can do a wholesale order. And hard to do anything unless I can get free shipping. But if you guys wanted to put together a big bulk order and have a get together and pick up your herbs, we can do something like that too. Just let me know. But doing something like this is going to help you in the short term to address many issues in a worst case scenario. But you need books to help you know what to do with these. So I have several great ones listed in the resources that I'm providing after the talk. Yeah, invest in some books, training, knowledge to know what to do with these once you have these beautiful herbs. And remember that the herbs in these jars won't last forever. So how will you replace them when you run out? So the same, you're going to want to order medicinal seeds and learn how to grow and harvest them. And the same books I'm recommending will teach you how to do that as well. And the best source on the web that I've found ordering medicinal seeds is strictly medicinalseeds.com. Medicinalseeds.com. Sometimes dried herbs have more potency actually because they're more concentrated and the water is out of there. And then it depends what you do with it. I mean, there's, tinctures and oils and salves and things like that where you are sometimes compounding, the strength of it depending on how much you use. All right. Now, Suzanne Shires is a friend of ours and is a brilliant, experienced herbalist, and she has a real gift for teaching. Her book is excellent. If you ever have the chance to attend one of her classes, you must do it. And when I was checking on her site earlier today, the link for her book wasn't working, but I will provide it here in case she got it fixed. But it is a wonderful, wonderful book. And if you see her at an event, you can get her to sign it for you. All right, so this is a quick little section on just some good ideas. Storing meds, keep it quiet, pets and livestock and seniors. For storage, it would be good to store like medications with like. So pain relievers together, allergy medications together. It pays to be organized in, oh, it's fixed. Good. Suzanne is here. I didn't know she was here, but she said the link is fixed. Books in stock. Order yours today. It's such a great book. But it does pay to be organized in a crisis. I mean, something's happening and you need something out of that bucket or box. You need to know right where to go and not be fumbling through there trying to find the thing that you need. So pay attention to expiration dates. It may still work, but it might be less potent. Do your own research about the meds that you're storing. A comment on an article I read stated, I store almost all of my dedicated stuff hits the fan drugs in 50 cal ammo boxes along with desiccant in a refrigerator kept at 45 degrees because most studies indicate temperature and moisture are shelf life killers for medications. Okay. Keep it quiet. Don't brag about your preps. You want to be in a position to be able to be generous if the situation warrants it, but you don't want to be targeted for what others know you have. Pets and livestock, don't forget about your animals. What are their medical needs? What are their existing medical needs? What are their potential medical needs? And if your animals are also working animals, they're going to be vital to you in a crisis. If your dog is a watchdog and something happens to your dog, then part of your security team is gone. So you need to consider them as well. Seniors, after Hurricane Katrina, there wasn't an open pharmacy for about 3 months. So that would be a problem, wouldn't it, if somebody needed a refilled prescription? Food and water won't count if you don't have needed meds. What assistive devices might you or they need? What if they break your glasses? What if you break your glasses? What if they use a wheelchair? Do you know how to repair it? What about hearing aids, denture adhesive, things like that? That could be very necessary, but you might not think about until you run out of it and can't get more. All right, this is a kind of a quick section on stocking a first aid kit, but some things that you want in that are a first aid book, tabbed, like I mentioned, with your table of contents and your index in it in case you've got to find something quickly. You want some antiseptic cleansers like alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, dedicated scissors that don't leave that bag. Don't let your kids borrow the scissors out of the bag and not put them back. Not that mine have ever done that. An antibiotic like Neosporin, a numbing agent like Ambisol or liquor, hydrocortisone ointment, burn salve, bandages in various sizes, feminine hygiene products for obvious reasons, but they can also absorb wound blood, painkillers, super glue and or a suture kit for wound closure, activated charcoal for food or chemical poisoning or gas. I don't mean gas poisoning. I mean, if you have gas, activated charcoal can help to absorb it and relieve you of gas pain. Bottle of water, latex gloves, dental floss, a dental filling repair kit, nail clippers and scissors, an emergency tourniquet, SAM splints to support, immobilize fractured or broken limbs, a thermometer, an emergency blanket or space blanket, fire starting kit, an MRE at least, meals ready to eat, magnifying glass, flashlight with extra batteries, spare sturdy glasses or contacts and contact solution, eye drops, and don't just let it sit there. You need to rotate your inventory and make sure your supplies don't dry up or expire. And you may even want duplicate kits, have one in each vehicle at work and at home. Does your church have a first aid kit? Just, things that you want to be able to grab these things, quickly and know how to use them in an emergency. Cultivating a long haul mindset. Slow down there. Before you go digging into your precious supplies, consider that sometimes you need to give the body time to do what it needs to do. In many instances, given the proper environment, the body will heal itself. It just usually takes longer than we want it to. And that's when people start dumping all kinds of drugs down their gullet to get rid of bothersome symptoms. But those symptoms are there for a reason, and that's part of the healing story the body may be trying to tell. For instance, a fever's purpose is to kill a bacteria or virus that's causing an infection. Fever activates your body's immune system. Why would you want to slow down that valuable process? A normal healthy fever is up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you've been injured, you might need to give the injury time to recover and heal. Don't waste your stockpile. Wait and see if you can. In the long haul, you may just have to develop a higher tolerance to pain, avoid the triggers for it, or develop natural remedies to help with it. In a long haul type situation, getting in your exercise, I think we'll all be forced to be more physically active, which can be a good immune system booster. surviving day by day. You're stimulating lymph flow and working your lungs so you can flush out toxins more efficiently. Exercise or physical work raises your body temperature, almost like a low-grade fever. So you're boosting your body's ability to burn up harmful bacteria. Long haul mindset, good hygiene, everybody. It's very important. So make a plan for how you're going to wash your hands after using the bathroom, caring for animals, or handling raw meat. Also, remember that hygiene and these medical supplies can make great barter items should you need them. Have multivitamins stocked. It's important to get in all of your needed vitamins and minerals. And sometimes, certain times of the year, especially, that might be difficult to do. If you're working through your supply of rice, beans, and spam, you may need some extra vitamins and nutrients on board to handle all the processes the body's trying to do. And be proactive. Don't disregard your health until a disaster happens or wait until you're sick to become concerned about your health. And along with that, how to need fewer stockpiled meds. Well, as good as, if not better than stocking up on potentially needed meds would be to improve your health to the point that you can reduce or eliminate the need for medications. Reduce your consumption of processed foods, eat healthier foods, lose weight if needed, get more exercise, build muscle and bone mass, take better care of yourself now, because preventing illnesses and injuries is the most important medical to have. Conditions can be better controlled by lifestyle than medication. To see what some more natural options might be. Tough advice seen in the comments section. And I'm almost done with the slides. So on this one comment section on this page, Josie, name has been changed to protect the innocent, said, I've been worried about what I would do if the stuff hits the fan, comes along, and I can't get any of my meds anymore, like for my blood sugar issues and high blood pressure issues. So this article may just be the answer to all my worries. And I have been a little harsh, but he said, might I be so bold the last can of Bush's baked beans and have switched to dandelion greens and pressure and blood sugar problems will have cured themselves, especially blood sugar when you would trade your firstborn for a super grande latte with extra cream and sugar from Starbucks. Let's see. Sorry, something just popped up on the screen. When the last concoction passed your lips was 6 months ago, you may just find that if you had the means to get your A1C tested, it was about 3, especially with moving those buckets of water from the fire for dishwashing by hand, clothes washing by hand, drinking purposes, and yes, of course, the occasional bath. Oh, and the other daily exercises of kneading dough to make flatbread, chopping kindling, gathering kindling prior to chopping it, carrying the 30-30 that your granddad gave your husband before he passed away, while carrying the axe to chop the kindling, and then carrying the 30-30 axe and kindling back a quarter mile to the soddy, together with several magazines full of ammunition in the cartridge belt around your waist to feed the 30-30. So tough times make tougher people. And then this other dear woman, Linda, said, the best thing you can do for your health, practice everything in moderation and stop worrying about your health. I'm 72 and haven't 30 years. I have aches and pains. Eat when you're hungry and stay away from the national news. Don't worry about what other people are doing with their lives or what they think you should be doing with yours. Be kind, but don't take any crap. When it's your time to die, just do it. So my advice would be take the time now to prepare. You won't regret being prepared, but you will regret it if you're not. And these are the references that I used to build this presentation. So those are all the slides that I have for you. I see Jenny asked, what are examples of illnesses that absolutely must have meds? It's a good question. There are, and the thing is, like my dad is on so many medications. And, in a worst case scenario, if he had to come off those medications, oh, there's William. Hi. There's my cousin William from Alabama right there. I didn't know he was going to be here. So yeah, if my dad had to stop taking those medications, I don't know what would happen in the short term or the long term. Which ones he could roll off of and, maybe not notice anything at all, and which ones, might cause a problem. Of course, he's convinced he needs all of them. Especially the cardiovascular meds and things like that. I mean, he's got a 90% blockage in his main artery. So, without those medications, I don't know what would happen. Type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, definitely. Type 2 diabetes, a lot of that can be controlled with diet, better managed. Type 1 diabetes, when the body's no longer making insulin, that can definitely be a problem. And those people are going to be in dire straits should their access to insulin be cut off, but I did mention things like Gymnema sylvestre, Tonkat Ali, and I think it was fenugreek are herbs that are known to be able to help regenerate beta cells in the pancreas. So depending on how much damage has occurred in the pancreas over the years, those herbs might be able to rebuild those very valuable beta cells and produce more insulin. Gosh, I mean, it's a great question, Jenny. I would need probably time to research that to be able to put something together to give you a a really thoughtful answer. But just off the top of my head, I'm thinking tip to toe. Um, People with epilepsy. I don't know. A lot of that could be controlled with a keto diet, but how much access to a keto diet is somebody going to have in a real grid down type situation? Even low carb stuff can be difficult in a grid down or worst case scenario situation if somebody does have type 2 diabetes. So they're all going to be definitely things to consider, and what you need to work around. Keeping inflammation down, always important for any condition. Almost, so many diseases or conditions, end with the four letters itis, and that just means inflammation of, myocarditis is inflammation of the heart, and arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, even though that's autoimmune in nature, can still be managed with an autoimmune protocol and anti-inflammatory diet. Do I recommend a low carb keto lifestyle? That is definitely a lower carb than most Americans keep. And so more paleo in nature with, meat and vegetables and nuts and seeds, things like that, that our ancestors would have eaten more than we eat today. So you can imagine all the processed foods aren't doing us any good. All the fast foods aren't doing us any good. So, anytime you're cutting out those categories of foods, you're almost automatically leaning into a lower carb lifestyle than you would if you were eating our modern foods. Keto is sometimes good cycling in and out of, maybe not staying on long term. It can really mess with women's hormones. So that's something that, having diet variation is an important thing to work in and out of, and not getting obsessive or orthorexic about eating any one particular way. Although I would be obsessive and orthorexic about not eating, standard American processed and fast foods, if that helps. Any other questions? Anybody want to have a chat about anything? And don't forget, so I don't know if you were going to drop it in the chat, the link for you guys to sign up for the ebook. I would love it. This is my first time to do anything like this. And I would love it if you guys would sign up for my ebook. Let's see.
There will be a link at the end of the video once I edit it and post it on Facebook, as well as all the links will be listed in the comment section on YouTube when I post as well. So There'll be a
Okay.
couple different ways to access it. Yes.
I just dropped it in the chat too. So if you guys want to
Awesome.
follow that link, and I just need your first name and your email address, and you get immediate access to download the ebook that I did. And it was very technological, and I've never done anything like that before. So if you run into any problems, it's definitely user or not. It's not user error. It's my error. But let me know if you run into any problems, and I'll see what I can do to fix it.
Any more questions for anyone? All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Jen. There was some very great information, and I hate to say it, but relevant at this time in our history, unfortunately, with everything that's going on in the world and at times here in the U.S. So thank you for being with us and the great information. And as I just said at the end of the video, I will post all the links to the different websites, the different businesses, as well as your ebook and resource link and stuff for people to check it out and stuff. This is the last of our virtual classes for 2022, but we will be back in 2023 with monthly Zoom classes just like this. We're looking at doing 2 classes a month. So starting in January all the way through next December, there'll be 2 different classes each month, free for you. We'll all post all the information in our 2 Facebook groups. So please sign up. And again, if you can't make it, a day or 2 after the actual class, I'll get it posted and updated on our YouTube channel. Anybody have any last questions or anything? Everyone, please have a happy, safe, and blessed Christmas and New Year's. I hope you found this class beneficial and that it gives you a good starting point towards preparing yourself and your family for the unknown that we all feel is coming. We have a lot more learning opportunities coming in 2023. We will be hosting 2 virtual Zoom classes each month, as well as adding some additional interviews and custom content. In addition to the Zoom classes, we have 3 great in-person learning and fellowship opportunities in 2023. We have the Patriot Homesteaders Conference, April 28th through the 30th at the Scott County Fairgrounds in Scottsburg, Indiana. We have the Kentucky Bushcraft Weekend, July 21st through the 23rd at Double J Stables in Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. We also have the Heartland Homesteading Conference, September 29th through October 1st at Home Place on the Green River in Campbellsville, Kentucky. We're also working on a couple meet and greets for fellowship, so be sure to join one of our Facebook groups to keep up with the latest information. And again, I want to thank Dr. Jen with Dillman Wellness for talking with us and sharing some very timely information. On behalf of the M.A.G Network, I am Indy Guy. We hope you all have a happy, safe, and blessed Christmas and New Year's. Be safe, have the knowledge.